I never expected my roommate to get jealous of me. At first, I didn't even realize that's what it was. I thought Drew was just being annoying. Looking back now, all the signs were there. The comments, the mood swings, the way he'd suddenly appear whenever I was talking to another guy, the way his expression changed whenever someone flirted with me. But at the time, I was completely clueless. My name is Carter, and this all started about 8 months after I moved in with Drew. We met through a mutual friend. I needed a roommate after my previous one moved in with his girlfriend, and Drew needed someone to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment near downtown. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary, a year at most. Then we'd go our separate ways. Instead, we became best friends. Drew was one of those people everyone liked immediately. Tall, athletic, confident without being arrogant. He could walk into a room full of strangers and somehow leave with 10 new friends. Meanwhile, I was the complete opposite. More reserved, more comfortable with small groups. I wasn't shy exactly, but I definitely wasn't Drew. Somehow our personalities balanced each other out. We watched movies together, cooked dinner together, went to bars on weekends. After a few months, people started assuming we'd known each other our whole lives. The weird thing was that Drew claimed to be completely straight. I never questioned it. Why would I? He dated women, talked about women, had absolutely no problem pointing out attractive women every 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I was openly gay. He knew from the first day we met, and he never cared. Not even a little. Actually, he was probably the most comfortable straight guy I'd ever met around me. At least that's what I thought. Everything was normal until one Friday night. My friend Ethan invited me to a birthday party. Nothing huge, just drinks at a rooftop bar. Drew was supposed to come too. Then he got called into work unexpectedly. "Damn," he said while throwing on a jacket. "I was actually looking forward to tonight. You'll survive." "Maybe." I laughed. "You sound heartbroken." "I'm serious." He pointed at me. "Don't have too much fun without me." I rolled my eyes. Then I left. At the party, everything felt normal. I grabbed drinks, talked to friends, met some new people. One of them was a guy named Ryan. Ryan was funny, cute, easy to talk to. We spent most of the evening hanging out near the bar. Nothing serious, just flirting. The kind of harmless conversation that sometimes happens when two single people meet. At one point, Ryan asked for my number. I gave it to him. No big deal. I honestly forgot about it until I got home. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. Drew was sitting at the counter eating leftover pizza. "You're back." "Obviously." "How was it?" I tossed my keys onto the counter. "Pretty good." "Anyone interesting there?" The question caught me off guard. Sure." His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" I laughed. "Nothing." "Carter." "What?" He pointed a slice of pizza at me. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The look you get when you meet someone." I stared at him. "How do you even know that?" "I live with you." "Fair point." I opened the fridge. "His name's Ryan." For some reason, Drew's expression changed. Just slightly, barely noticeable, but enough for me to catch it. "Oh, yeah." Silence. Then, "Is he actually your type?" I blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "A normal one." "No, it's not." Drew shrugged. I couldn't explain it, but the whole conversation suddenly felt weird, like he was interviewing me, or evaluating someone he'd never met. Eventually, I changed the subject. We watched TV, talked about random stuff. The moment passed, or so I thought. The next morning, I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Morning. Had fun last night. Want to grab dinner this week?" I smiled. Before I could reply, a voice appeared behind me. "Who's that?" I nearly dropped my phone. "Dude." Drew laughed. "You jump way too easily." I locked my screen. "Nobody." "Ryan." I looked at him suspiciously. "Why do you care?" He immediately looked away. "I don't." "You literally asked." "I was making conversation." "Sure." For some reason, Drew seemed irritated. The rest of the morning felt strangely tense. Not angry, Just off. Then things got even weirder. 3 days later, I went on a date with Ryan. It was good. Not amazing. Not life-changing. Just good. We had dinner. Walked around downtown. Talked for hours. By the time I got home, I was smiling. And apparently that was my first mistake. Because Drew took one look at me and immediately frowned. "Why are you smiling like that?" I laughed. "What? You've been smiling since you walked in. Maybe I had a good night. Must have been a really good night." The tone surprised me. I sat down across from him. "Drew, what? Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Then why do you sound annoyed?" He stared at me for a second, then looked away. "I'm not annoyed." He absolutely was. The problem was that I couldn't figure out why. At the time, I thought maybe he was stressed from work. Maybe something happened. Maybe I was imagining it. But over the next few weeks, a pattern started appearing. Every time another guy showed interest in me, Drew got weird, and I was about to discover just how weird. The first time I seriously noticed it happened at a bar. About 2 weeks after my date with Ryan, a group of friends invited Drew and me out on a Saturday night. The place was packed. Music blasting. People squeezed shoulder to shoulder near the bar. Drew and I were standing with our drinks when a guy I'd never seen before walked over. He smiled at me, not at our group. At me. "Hey." I smiled back. "Hey, I'm Tyler. Carter." We started talking. Nothing serious. Just normal conversation. "Where are you from? What do you do? How do you know everyone here?" The usual stuff. After maybe 10 minutes, Tyler asked if I wanted another drink. I was about to say yes when Drew suddenly appeared beside me. Literally appeared. 1 second he was across the room. The next he was standing between us. "Carter." I blinked. "Yeah. You said you'd help me find Mike." "What?" His eyes widened. For a split second. Like he'd just realized he made that up. "Oh, right." I stared at him. "We never said that." Tyler looked confused. Drew laughed awkwardly. "Guess I'm drunk." He grabbed my shoulder. A little tighter than necessary. Then stayed there. Standing next to me. Not leaving. Not saying anything. Just existing. Like a giant human barricade. The conversation with Tyler died within minutes. Eventually Tyler excused himself. As soon as he walked away, I turned to Drew. "What was that?" "What was what?" "That." He looked genuinely confused. "I don't know what you're talking about. You interrupted us." So why?" Drew took a drink. "No reason." The answer felt suspicious. But I let it go. Then it happened again. And again. And again. The weirdest part was that Drew didn't seem aware he was doing it. Every time another guy showed interest in me, he'd find a reason to insert himself into the situation. Sometimes it was subtle. Sometimes it wasn't. One night a guy bought me a drink. Drew immediately challenged him to darts. Another time someone asked for my number. Drew suddenly needed my help carrying chairs. At first I thought it was coincidence. Then even our friends started noticing. The moment everything clicked happened during game night. A bunch of people came over to our apartment. Cards, pizza, beer, the usual. One of our friends brought his cousin. His name was Ben. Ben was exactly my type. Dark hair, great smile, funny, single. Unfortunately for me, Ben apparently thought I was his type too. We spent most of the evening talking, laughing, getting along surprisingly well. At one point Ben sat beside me on the couch. The second he did, Drew's mood changed. I saw it happen. His smile disappeared. His answers got shorter. His attention kept drifting toward us. And the more Ben talked to me, the worse it got. Finally, our friend Lisa leaned over toward me, quiet enough that only I could hear. "Oh my God." "What?" She glanced toward Drew, then back at me. "He's jealous." I nearly choked on my drink. "What?" "Drew." I laughed immediately. "No." "Yes." "No." She pointed subtly across the room. "Look at him." I did. Drew was pretending to watch the card game. But every few seconds his eyes flicked toward me and Ben. Every single time. "See." That's not jealousy. Lisa grinned. Carter. No. Carter. He's straight. Her grin got even bigger. Sure. I hated how uncertain that made me feel. The rest of the night, I couldn't stop noticing things. The way Drew kept interrupting. The way he'd suddenly join conversations. The way he'd find excuses to pull me away. By midnight, even Ben looked confused. When everyone finally left, the apartment fell quiet. I started loading dishes into the dishwasher. Drew was cleaning the living room. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he casually asked, "So?" I looked up. "So? What's Ben's deal?" There it was. I almost laughed. "What do you mean?" "He seemed into you." The fact that he'd noticed immediately wasn't helping his case. I shrugged. "Maybe." Drew's jaw tightened. Just slightly. "Do you like him?" The question landed differently than it should have. Too direct. Too personal. I leaned against the counter. "Why do you care?" He froze. For a second. Just 1 second. Then he looked away. "I don't." "You definitely do." His expression hardened. "No, I don't." "Drew." "What?" "You're acting weird." "I'm acting normal." "No." I laughed. "You've been weird for weeks." That got his attention. "What does that mean?" "It means every time I talk to another guy, you suddenly become involved." His face immediately went red. Not bright red, but enough. The reaction shocked me, because people don't get defensive about things that aren't true. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" "Yes." I crossed my arms. "Then explain tonight." "Nothing happened tonight." "You practically chased Ben out of the apartment." "I did not." "You absolutely did." The argument should have been funny. Instead, it felt strangely intense. Drew looked frustrated. Really frustrated. Like he was trying to explain something he couldn't put into words. Finally, he shook his head. "You know what?" "What?" "Forget it." Then he walked away. Just like that. Conversation over. I stood alone in the kitchen staring after him. Confused. Because for the first time since we'd met, I wasn't sure what was going on inside Drew's head. And deep down, I had a feeling the answer was going to change everything. After our argument, things became awkward. Not obviously awkward. Neither of us stopped talking. Neither of us got angry. But there was definitely something different. Something sitting between us that neither of us wanted to address. For almost a week, Drew acted completely normal. Too normal. Like he was deliberately trying to prove I was wrong. No weird comments. No interruptions. No suspicious behavior. Honestly, I started wondering if I'd imagined everything. Maybe Lisa had gotten into my head. Maybe Drew wasn't jealous. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Then Friday happened. And that theory disappeared immediately. I was getting ready for a date. Not with Ryan. That had fizzled out after a few weeks. This was someone new. A guy named Logan. We'd met through friends. Talked for a while. Finally decided to grab dinner together. Nothing serious. Just seeing where things went. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror fixing my hair when Drew walked past. He stopped. Looked at me. Then looked again. "Where are you going?" I smiled. "Date." His expression immediately changed. There it was again. That tiny shift. The one I'd started recognizing. "Oh." I pretended not to notice. "Yeah." Silence. Then, "With who?" I laughed. "Drew." "What?" "You sound like an angry boyfriend." His eyes widened. Then he immediately looked away. "I do not." "You kind of do." He crossed his arms. "What's his name?" The fact that he completely ignored my comment made me grin. "Logan." Drew nodded. Once. Twice. Then, "How long have you known him?" I couldn't help laughing. "Are you interviewing him?" "No." "Then why are you asking?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Then finally shrugged. "Just curious." I didn't buy it for a second. Neither did he. The date itself went well. Logan was great. Funny. Smart. Easy to talk to. The kind of person who made 3 hours feel like 30 minutes. By the time I got home, I was in a genuinely good mood. The apartment lights were still on. Drew was sitting on the couch watching TV, or pretending to watch TV, because the second I walked through the door, he muted it. Immediately, like he'd been waiting. Hey, hey, how was it? I dropped onto the opposite end of the couch. It was good. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Good. Yeah. Like, good. I stared at him. Drew. What? Seriously. He sighed dramatically. What happened? I started laughing. I can't believe this. Can't believe what? You care more about my dates than I do. I don't care. You absolutely care. His face turned red. Again, that alone should have been enough evidence. But somehow he kept trying to deny it. Eventually I told him about the night, the restaurant, the conversation, the stupid joke Logan made that had me laughing for 10 straight minutes. As I talked, Drew got quieter, and quieter, and quieter, until finally I stopped. Okay. What? Now you're definitely upset. I'm not upset. You look upset. I don't. Pointed at him. You're literally pouting. His mouth fell open. I am not pouting. You are. Drew. What? You know I can see your face, right? That actually made him laugh. For a second. Then the smile disappeared again. And suddenly he looked tired. Not angry. Not jealous. Just tired. The shift caught me off guard. You okay? He stared at the TV. For several seconds. Then quietly said, yeah. I knew immediately that wasn't true. But before I could ask anything else, he stood up. I'm going to bed. And just like that, he disappeared into his room, leaving me sitting there alone, confused. Again, the next few weeks only made things worse. Because Logan and I started seeing each other regularly, not officially dating, but close. Close enough that people started asking questions. Close enough that he came over a few times. And every single time he did, Drew became impossible. The first time Logan visited the apartment, Drew cleaned the entire kitchen. Twice. The second time, he somehow managed to join every conversation. The third time, he stayed in the living room until almost 2 in the morning, despite having work at 7. At one point, Logan actually laughed and asked, "Does your roommate always do this?" I nearly choked. Do what? Hover. I stared at him, because that was exactly the right word. Hover. Drew hovered, like he wanted to leave, but couldn't, like every part of him was trying to stay involved, even when there was no reason to. A few days later, Lisa cornered me again. We were grabbing coffee before work. She took one look at my face and groaned. Oh my God. What? You still haven't figured it out. I sighed. Figured what out? She looked genuinely concerned for me. Carter. What? Drew likes you. I laughed immediately. No. Yes. No. Yes. I shook my head. He's straight. Lisa rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Then why does he act like someone's stealing his husband every time you go on a date? I opened my mouth, then stopped, because honestly, I didn't have an answer. And for the first time, that scared me a little, because if Lisa was right, then everything was about to get a lot more complicated, especially since Logan had just asked me to be exclusive, and I hadn't given him an answer yet. Not because I didn't like him, but because every time I thought about saying yes, for some reason my mind kept drifting back to Drew, and I was starting to realize there might be a reason for that. I should have said yes to Logan. Looking back, that would have been the logical thing to do. He was attractive, kind, actually interested in me. There was no drama, no confusion, no mixed signals, just a genuinely good guy who wanted to see where things could go. Instead, I asked for time, and the second the words left my mouth, I hated myself for it, because I already knew why I was hesitating. Drew. Unfortunately, admitting that to myself didn't make things any easier. A few nights later, Logan came over again. We ordered takeout, watched a movie, hung out in the living room. Everything was normal, at least until Drew got home. The second he walked through the front door, I noticed it. That look, the one I'd become way too familiar with. His eyes landed on Logan, then me, then Logan again. For a brief second, his smile vanished. Hey, hey, I replied. Logan waved. What's up, man? Drew forced a smile. Not much. Then he disappeared into the kitchen. A minute later, I heard cabinets opening, closing, opening again, closing again. Logan looked toward the kitchen, then back at me. Okay, I sighed. What? Now I definitely know I'm not imagining it. I nearly groaned. Please don't start. Carter. No. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He absolutely hates me. I rubbed my forehead. Trust me. If Drew hated you, you'd know. That was true. Drew wasn't fake. If he disliked someone, it showed. The problem was that whatever he felt toward Logan wasn't hatred. It was something else. Something neither of us wanted to say out loud. An hour later, Logan left. And for the first time, Drew didn't immediately retreat to his room. Instead, he sat across from me, silent, staring at his phone, pretending to scroll. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Drew. What? Do you dislike Logan? His head snapped up. What? You heard me. He looked away immediately. No. Then why do you act weird whenever he's around? I'm not acting weird. I laughed. That answer was becoming predictable. Drew. What? You literally reorganized the spice rack while we were watching a movie. His face went red. I was cleaning. You hate cleaning. No, I don't. You absolutely do. He opened his mouth, closed it, then glared at me. I couldn't stop smiling. For some reason, that made him even more irritated. You're impossible. You're jealous. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Silence. Complete silence. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Drew stared at me. I stared back. Neither of us moved. Then he laughed. A forced laugh. One that sounded completely fake. Jealous? Yeah. Of Logan. I shrugged. Maybe. The smile vanished from his face. Instantly. And that's when something changed. Because for the first time, he didn't deny it. Instead, he stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked away. Just like that. No argument. No joke. Nothing. Which somehow felt worse. The next few days were strange. Drew became distant. Not rude. Not cold. Just distant. He spent more time in his room. Stayed later at work. Stopped joining me for movies. Even our friends noticed. Lisa pulled me aside during a group dinner. What happened? I sighed. I don't know. Yes, you do. No, seriously. I told her about the conversation. The jealousy comment. The way Drew reacted. By the time I finished, Lisa looked like she wanted to scream. Carter. What? He's in love with you. I almost dropped my drink. Okay. That's insane. Is it? Yes. No. I groaned. Can you stop? No. She leaned forward. I'm serious. I looked away, because the truth was, part of me had started wondering the same thing. And I hated it. Not because the idea bothered me, because it didn't. That was the problem. A few months earlier, the thought would have seemed ridiculous. Now I wasn't so sure. And every time I pictured Drew with someone else, I felt something ugly in my chest. Something suspiciously close to jealousy, which was incredibly inconvenient, because apparently we were both idiots. The breaking point came the following weekend. A bunch of us went to a friend's apartment for drinks. Nothing fancy, just music, food, and too many people squeezed into a small living room. At some point, Drew disappeared. I didn't think much of it, until Lisa walked over. Your boyfriend is outside. I sighed. Not helping. Go look. Curious, I stepped onto the balcony. Drew was standing alone, leaning against the railing, looking out at the city. The second he heard the door open, he glanced back. Oh, you okay? Yeah. I walked beside him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city lights stretched below us. Cars moving through the streets. Music thumping faintly from inside. Finally, Drew sighed. Carter. The way he said my name immediately made my stomach tighten. What? He looked down, then laughed softly. Not because anything was funny, more because he seemed nervous, which was unusual. Drew was never nervous. I need to tell you something. Every alarm in my brain went off at once. The way he said it, the way he couldn't look at me, the way his hands kept fidgeting. Suddenly I knew. Not exactly what he was going to say, but enough. Enough to feel my pulse speeding up. Enough to realize everything was about to change. And when Drew finally looked at me, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. The kind that only appears when someone is about to risk everything. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. The city stretched out below us. Music drifted through the balcony door behind us. People laughed inside. But all I could focus on was Drew, because I had never seen him look like this before. Nervous, scared, almost vulnerable. And somehow that scared me too. Drew, he swallowed, then looked away. I've been trying not to say anything. My heart started beating faster. About what? He laughed softly, the kind of laugh people make when they're already regretting something. You know what's funny? What? I had this whole speech prepared. Despite everything, I smiled. You made a speech? Shut up. That actually earned a real laugh from both of us. For a moment, the tension eased. Then it came back immediately, stronger than before. Drew rubbed the back of his neck. A nervous habit I'd seen 100 times. But never like this. Every time you start seeing someone. He stopped, looked down, then continued. I tell myself it doesn't matter. I felt my stomach drop. Drew, I tell myself you're my friend. His voice had become quieter, more serious. And that I should be happy for you. Neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. But then I see you with someone. He laughed again, bitter this time. And suddenly I can't stand it. The words hit me harder than I expected. Because now there was no pretending. No confusion. No excuses. I knew exactly what he was saying. And so did he. Drew. His jaw tightened. I know. What? I know how ridiculous this sounds. It doesn't. His eyes finally met mine. And for the first time all night, I saw hope there. Just a little. Just enough. That somehow made everything feel even more real. I've never felt like this before, Carter. The confession came out quietly, almost like he was embarrassed by it. I don't know what it means. My chest tightened. Drew, I don't know if I'm gay. He looked away again. Or bi. Or whatever. His voice cracked slightly. And honestly, I don't care anymore. My heart practically stopped. Because suddenly every weird moment made sense. Every interruption. Every jealous look. Every strange reaction. All of it. The entire puzzle finally clicked into place. I just know that every time some guy gets close to you, he exhaled slowly. I hate it. Silence. The longest silence of my life. Then, oh, brilliant response. Truly. Years of education had prepared me to say exactly one word. Drew laughed. You know, that's somehow worse than being rejected. I snapped out of my shock. What? You just hit me with an oh. I couldn't help laughing. Dude, you just rewired my brain. A reluctant smile appeared on his face. At least until reality returned. Then the smile disappeared. And suddenly he looked exhausted. I don't expect anything. The words surprised me. What? I'm serious. He looked directly at me. I don't. His expression was honest. Painfully honest. I just couldn't keep pretending. Something about that hurt. Because I realized how long he'd been carrying this alone. How confused he must have been. How terrified. And somehow, all I wanted to do was make it easier. The problem was that my own feelings were a complete mess. Because while Drew was talking, a realization had quietly settled into my chest. One I wasn't ready for. One I'd been avoiding for weeks. Maybe longer. The truth was, I wasn't upset that Drew liked me. Not even a little. If anything, the idea made me happy. Dangerously happy. Which explained why I'd been unable to fully commit to Logan. Why every date felt incomplete. Why every time someone flirted with me, I compared them to Drew without realizing it. And suddenly that realization was impossible to ignore. Unfortunately, before I could say anything, the balcony door opened. Carter! We both jumped. Lisa stepped outside, then immediately froze. Her eyes moved between us, back and forth, and then she groaned. "Oh my God!" Neither of us spoke. Lisa pointed dramatically. "You finally told him." Drew looked horrified. I looked horrified. Lisa looked thrilled. "How long were you listening?" "Long enough." "Lisa, I waited 6 months for this." She actually looked emotional, which was ridiculous. Drew buried his face in his hands. "This is a nightmare." "No." Lisa grinned. "This is my Super Bowl." I started laughing. Then Drew started laughing. And somehow the tension broke. Not completely, but enough. Enough that breathing felt easier. Enough that for the first time all night, Drew smiled. A real smile. The kind I'd been missing for weeks. Unfortunately, there was still one huge problem. Because liking each other was one thing. Figuring out what happened next, that was something else entirely. And neither of us had any idea where to start. The next few days were surprisingly normal, which somehow made everything feel even stranger. Because now I knew, and Drew knew that I knew, and neither of us seemed brave enough to bring it up again. We still watched movies, still grabbed food together, still argued about stupid things like whose turn it was to buy groceries. But underneath every conversation was something new, something neither of us could ignore. The awareness. The problem was that Drew had basically handed me his heart on that balcony, and I still hadn't given him an answer. Not really. Partly because I needed time, partly because I was scared, and partly because of Logan. I still hadn't ended things. We weren't officially boyfriends, but he deserved honesty. The guilt sat in my stomach all week. Eventually I called him. We met for coffee. The second I sat down, he knew, which honestly made the whole thing easier. "You met someone." I blinked. "What?" Logan smiled sadly. "You did." I looked down. For a moment I couldn't speak. Then I nodded. "A little." He sighed. "I knew it." "I'm sorry. It's your roommate, isn't it?" My head snapped up. Logan laughed. "Carter." "What?" "I'm not blind." I groaned. "Was it that obvious?" "To literally everyone except you." That sounded familiar. A few minutes later we hugged goodbye. No drama, no anger, just two people acknowledging the truth. As I walked back to my car, I felt relieved and terrified, because now there were no excuses left. That night, Drew was sitting on the couch when I got home. Immediately I noticed how nervous he looked. He tried hiding it, failed completely. Hey, how was your day?" The question came way too fast. I sat down beside him. "It was okay." He nodded. Once, twice, then silence. I could practically hear him overthinking. Finally I sighed. "I met with Logan." Drew froze, completely froze. The room suddenly became very quiet. "Oh," that was all he said. Just one word. But I could hear everything underneath it. The disappointment, the resignation, the expectation that I was about to tell him Logan and I were officially together. My chest hurt. "Drew." He looked at me. "I ended it." His eyes widened. For several seconds he simply stared, like he wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. "What?" "I ended it." The look on his face nearly destroyed me, because hope appeared there so suddenly, so unexpectedly, and he clearly hated that it did. "Carter, I liked him. I was being honest. He was great." Drew nodded quietly. "But," I laughed softly, "but every time I was with him," I shook my head. "I was thinking about someone else." The silence that followed felt enormous. Neither of us moved. Neither of us looked away. And then something happened. For the first time since we'd met, Drew looked completely speechless, which was honestly impressive, because the guy always had something to say. "You mean?" I smiled. "Yeah." His heart was probably beating as fast as mine. I know mine felt like it was trying to escape my chest. The next thing I knew, we were both laughing. Not because anything was funny, just because the tension had finally snapped. Months of confusion, weeks of jealousy, all of it finally out in the open, and somehow neither of us knew what to do. This is weird, Drew groaned. Thank God. What? I thought I was losing my mind. I laughed. You kind of were. Fair. We sat there smiling like idiots. Then gradually the smiles faded. And suddenly we were just looking at each other. The moment stretched. Longer, 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 until neither of us could pretend anymore. Carter. His voice was quiet. What? Can I do something? Every nerve in my body immediately woke up. I already knew. At least I thought I did. And judging by the look in his eyes, so did he. Slowly I nodded. Drew moved closer. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough. Enough that I could feel my pulse pounding. Enough that I could see every nervous thought crossing his face. Then he stopped, giving me one final chance to pull away. I didn't. A second later, he kissed me. And every single confusing moment from the past few months suddenly made perfect sense. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was nervous, awkward, tentative. Two idiots trying to figure things out. But somehow that made it better. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We just stared. Then Drew laughed. Again. What? I can't believe that's what all this was about. I smiled. The jealousy? The jealousy. He buried his face in his hands. I was so bad at hiding it. You were terrible. I know. And honestly, seeing him embarrassed was almost as adorable as seeing him jealous. Almost. After the kiss, things should have been awkward. Honestly, I expected them to be. We'd been roommates for over a year. Best friends. Now suddenly we'd crossed a line neither of us had planned for. Instead, everything felt weirdly right. Not immediately. There were definitely some awkward moments. Like the fact that neither of us knew where to sit. Or how long eye contact was supposed to last. Or whether we were allowed to hold hands while watching TV. Turns out two grown men can be incredibly stupid. Especially when feelings are involved. A few days later, Lisa came over. The second she walked through the apartment door, she stopped. Looked at me. Then Drew. Then me again. And immediately started screaming. Not actual screaming, but close. I knew it. Drew groaned from the couch. Oh my God. I knew it. Please stop. I waited months for this. I couldn't stop laughing. Lisa pointed dramatically. You two owe me money. What? I called this. Drew threw a pillow at her. She caught it, still grinning. The worst part? She wasn't wrong. Every friend in our group reacted exactly the same way. Apparently everyone had figured it out before we did, which was mildly humiliating. As the weeks passed, something unexpected happened. The jealousy disappeared, almost overnight. And honestly, that was one of the biggest signs that Drew was finally happy. Before, every time another guy talked to me, he'd tense up, watch, hover, insert himself into the conversation. Now, nothing. The first time I noticed, it was during a friend's birthday party. A guy came over and started flirting with me, pretty openly. Past Drew would have hated it. Instead, he simply walked over, wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and smiled. Sorry. The guy looked confused. Drew kissed my cheek. My boyfriend. The guy immediately laughed. Okay, that's fair. Then he walked away. I turned toward Drew. Boyfriend. His ears instantly turned red. Oh, I grinned. Oh, I may have skipped a step. I started laughing. Drew looked horrified, then embarrassed, then amused. Finally, he pointed at me. You know what I meant. I do. Good. For some reason, that tiny moment stayed with me, because for the first time, I realized how much happier he looked. Lighter, more relaxed, like he'd finally stopped fighting himself. And honestly, so had I. A month later, we went away for a weekend. Nothing fancy, just a small lake cabin a friend let us borrow. No city noise, no work, no distractions, just us. The first night we sat on the dock watching the sunset. The water reflected orange and gold. Everything felt calm, quiet, peaceful. Drew sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. After a while he sighed. What? He smiled. Nothing. Drew. He laughed. I was just thinking. Dangerous. Very. I leaned back against the dock. What were you thinking about? For a moment he didn't answer. Then, I almost moved out. I turned toward him. What? A few months ago. That got my attention immediately. What are you talking about? He looked out across the water. Before everything happened. My stomach dropped. You never told me that. I know. Why? He laughed softly. Because apparently every difficult conversation came with a nervous laugh. I thought it would be easier. Easier. If I wasn't around you. The words hit harder than I expected. Because I could hear how serious he was. How much he'd struggled. I figured eventually you'd meet someone. He shrugged. And I'd have to watch it happen. My chest tightened. Drew. So I started looking at apartments. For several seconds I couldn't speak. The idea genuinely hurt. The idea of him leaving. Of us never figuring this out. Of losing him completely. It hurt more than it should have. And that realization told me everything I needed to know. Because months ago, before all this, I would have been sad. Now the thought felt unbearable. I reached over and grabbed his hand. Immediately his fingers squeezed mine. I would have hated that. His smile was small, soft. Yeah. Seriously. I know. No. I looked directly at him. I mean it. Something changed in his expression. The teasing disappeared. The humor disappeared. All that remained was honesty. And for the first time I saw exactly how much he needed to hear that. How much he'd feared the opposite. So I said it again. I would have hated it. This time he smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached his eyes. The kind that made my chest feel warm. Then he leaned over, rested his forehead against mine, and quietly said, I'm really glad I stayed. I smiled. Me too. And for the first time since all of this started, neither of us felt uncertain anymore. Because what we'd found wasn't temporary. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't jealousy. It was something much bigger than that. Something that had been growing right in front of us for months. Neither of us had been brave enough to admit it. Until now. The funny thing about finally getting what you want. Sometimes it doesn't feel real right away. For weeks after Drew and I got together, there were moments where I'd wake up and need a second to remember that everything had actually happened. That the jealousy, the confusion, the months of tension, all of it had led here, to us. And honestly, I don't think either of us stopped being surprised by it. A few weeks after the lake trip, our friends decided to host a game night. The same group that had spent months watching us dance around our feelings, which meant they were absolutely unbearable. The second we walked through the door together, Lisa pointed dramatically. There they are. Drew sighed. Please. The slowest love story in human history. Several people immediately agreed. Someone actually started clapping. I buried my face in my hands. This is awful. It's deserved, Lisa said. You guys made us watch that for months. Drew looked offended. We weren't that obvious. The entire room burst out laughing. That answer alone told him everything he needed to know. Later that night, while everyone else was distracted by a card game, I found myself standing alone in the kitchen. A familiar voice appeared beside me. You know. I looked over. Drew leaned against the counter. What? I still can't believe you thought I wasn't jealous. I laughed immediately. Drew. What? You practically followed me around. That's not true. It absolutely is. He looked offended. I was subtle. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. You challenged a guy to darts because he complimented me. His face immediately turned red. Okay. You reorganized our kitchen because Logan was sitting on our couch. I was stressed. You interrupted every conversation I had for 3 months. Okay, that one is fair. I couldn't stop smiling. Neither could he. And honestly, that's what I loved most. Not the confession. Not the first kiss. Not even the fact that we'd finally figured things out. It was this, the easy part, the comfortable part, the part where being together felt natural, like we'd been doing it forever. A few days later, something happened that I never expected. Drew's parents came to visit. I was nervous, probably more nervous than he was, which made no sense. Unfortunately, his mother figured everything out within approximately 30 seconds. Maybe less. The woman was terrifyingly observant. We were sitting in the living room talking when she suddenly smiled, then looked directly at Drew, then at me, then back at Drew. Oh, my stomach dropped. Drew nearly choked on his drink. What? His mother smiled, a very knowing smile. Oh, that was all she said. Nothing else. Just one word. And somehow it was enough. Later that night, after they left, I looked at him. She knows. Yep. She definitely knows. Yep. That's terrifying. Drew laughed. Welcome to my childhood. As the months passed, life settled into something comfortable. Normal. In the best possible way. Movie nights became date nights. Grocery shopping became something we did together. Weekends became road trips. Small traditions formed without us realizing it. Sunday breakfast, Friday takeout, late-night walks when neither of us could sleep. The kind of little things that slowly become important. The kind of things you miss when they're gone. Not that I planned on letting them disappear. One evening, nearly a year after that first jealous reaction at the rooftop party, Drew and I were sitting on our apartment balcony. The same apartment where everything had started. The city lights glowed below us. The air was cool, quiet, peaceful. Drew sat beside me with his feet resting on the railing. After a while, he nudged my shoulder. What? He smiled. Remember Ryan? I groaned immediately. Oh no, the first guy. I know who Ryan is. Drew started laughing. I hated him. You didn't even know him. Didn't matter. I rolled my eyes. You're ridiculous. I know. A few seconds passed. Then he grew quieter, more thoughtful. Finally, he looked at me. You know what the worst part was? What? He smiled softly. I didn't even realize I was jealous. That made me laugh. Because honestly, that was the most Drew thing I'd ever heard. I realized. Yeah. You were terrible at hiding it. I know. For a moment we just sat there, watching the city, listening to distant traffic, enjoying the quiet. Then Drew reached over and intertwined his fingers with mine. A simple gesture, one that somehow still made me smile. I got lucky. I looked at him. What? His expression softened. With you. My chest tightened immediately, because even after everything, even after all this time, he could still do that, still make my heart race. I squeezed his hand. No. He raised an eyebrow. No. You got jealous. That earned a laugh. Then I leaned closer. And somehow it worked out anyway. Drew groaned. Never letting that go, huh? Absolutely not. He shook his head, still smiling. And as I sat there beside him, looking out across the city we'd built our lives in, I realized something. The story had never really been about jealousy. Not completely. It was about two people who were terrified of losing each other. Two people who spent months pretending their feelings didn't exist. Two idiots who almost missed something incredible because they were too scared to say what they wanted. Thankfully, eventually we figured it out. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing.